Okay, welcome back. So I just showed you kind of the general overview of this project, but what we're going to do now is take a look at the fact that we do currently have a data factory, but what we're going to do is actually delete it for just a little bit. So I'm going to drop this temporarily into this kind of temp folder, make sure that I'm in the right repository, and then I'm just going to run a Terraform apply. And so this is going to delete my entire Azure Data Factory instance. So this is going to take just a minute, so I'm going to pause and then I'll resume here in just a second. Okay, so I'm back. If I refresh this, this should kind of go away. There should be an error, and the error is basically saying, "Hey, this data factory was not found." So let's hop back into the code real quick, and what we're going to do is bring it back in. So I brought it back into kind of like that main folder. But what I'm going to do this time is comment out the GitHub piece. So we'll just do a quick save all, and then I'll do another Terraform apply. So what I wanted to talk to you about in this demo, or this part of it, was the initial setup. So when you first start to set up your Azure Data Factory, there's a lot that you can do. Let me say yes to this real fast. There's a lot that you can do with Terraform. So you can set up your factory itself, give it a name, a location, a resource group. That's pretty standard for just about everything we create. We will give it the system assigned identity. So I talked to you about that before, which we'll need that for permissions. We also have the ability to set up GitHub configuration. And I will talk about that in just a minute because that's kind of the whole point of this one. I will go ahead and create role assignments. So I'm thinking ahead about my Azure Data Lake storage and my Key Vault. So what I will do is, like for the lake, for example, I'm going to scope this to my storage account. I'm going to have this storage blob data contributor role, and the principal will be the identity of my storage or my Azure Data Factory. So what I'm doing with these is going ahead and just granting my data factory access to interact with these things. But I've got a bunch of other code commented out here. So this code that's commented out would be for things like linked services, integration runtimes, just things that we have the ability to create within Terraform for Azure Data Factory, but things that we don't necessarily want to create. So I think I mentioned this before. I'm positive that I have. Azure Data Factory is a kind of drag and drop, low code, no code ETL tool. That's where you're going to be doing your work. It's not going to be developed typically in an editor like Visual Studio or anything along those lines. You're going to be working in the UI. That said, we can still back everything that we do with GitHub. I have a GitHub repository. So if I go to that, I've got my data platform is my, this is my account, and then I've got just azure.adf. So that's the repo. Within this repo, I've got three main branches, or three. I don't think I should say main because main is one of the branches. I've got three branches though. I've got main, I've got ADF publish, and I've got working. So the way that this works is that my main branch, let's step back. I will typically do work and develop code in any branch that I want, any kind of like made up branch name. So for me, I'm just going to do this in what's called a working branch, but it could be branch 1, 2, 3, dev, whatever. When I'm happy with the code that I've tested, I've done my debugging, then what I'll do is I'll merge it into my main branch. Once I'm happy with that, then we will publish it. And when we publish it, it publishes to the ADF publish branch. Now, what you'll see here is there is no ADF publish branch. That's kind of a default branch. What that branch does is it holds a series of ARM templates. So the ARM templates are really the things that we would see down here. What happens though is when we do have GitHub configuration that is supporting our data factory, we are in the UI, developing our code against a repository. However, all of these additional resources that we would create with Terraform would go against what they're calling, I believe, is live mode within Azure Data Factory. And so kind of having those two competing versions of Azure Data Factory, it's just not good practice. So while we could in theory create a lot of resources within Terraform, just don't. Like that's kind of what I'm saying is just don't do it. So these are some permissions behind the scenes. That's totally fine to do. We can't do permission management to external resources through Data Factory anyways. This is more of like an Azure specific thing. I'm just putting it here because we are really focusing on these particular pieces at this point. So kind of all that said, I just stood back up my Azure Data Factory, but I did so without doing GitHub configuration. So keep in mind that GitHub is already configured behind the scenes. It's already been stood up. It's already got a bunch of resources in there. There's already, I should probably show you this as well. There's already, if I go to my profile, if I go to, I think it's under settings, and then applications, under integration applications, and then authorized, no, not that, authorized OAuth apps. So Data Factory has already been authenticated here. I can go ahead and probably try to revoke this. I don't really revoke it too often, so I'm killing that off. Okay, so to recap, I should now have a working Data Factory, but there shouldn't really be anything in there. So let's go to my Azure portal. Let's do a refresh. Okay, so I've got a Data Factory. Let's launch it. Let's try to edit this. So I don't have any pipelines, no data sets. If I click on this, I have this option to set up a code repository, but I don't want to do that. I want to try to do it through Terraform first. So let's uncomment this. So just a refresher, let's take one more look at this. If I go in here to my actual repo, let's go back a couple times. Okay, so it's azure.adf within the data platform. So the account is the data platform, the repo is azure.adf, the branch name is going to be main, it's github.com, true, and I'm not using any kind of main root folder here, I'm just doing a slash. So let's save all, do a Terraform apply. And so what I'm trying to do is establish some kind of connection between GitHub and and Azure Data Factory. So let's give this just a second. Now it's not too hard to do this with a fresh repo either. So let's just hop in and see what this looks like in a second. So, all right, so one thing has changed. Let's come in here. Let's just do a refresh and see what we've got. Okay, so I do have to log back in. So I showed you that I had deleted that app, that OAuth app. So let's just log back in real quick. Okay, so it asked me to log in. I did that. It sent me a multi-factor authentication request. I MFA'd it. So now what we have would be a couple of working branch. We've got my working branch, and then we've got the main branch, and then see it's kind of grayed out that ADF publish branch. That's that default branch. If we hop back in, let's take one more look at my settings. We will go back down to the applications and the authorized apps, and so we see that Azure Data Factory is back here again. Let's hop back over to the factory itself. I'm just going to do a refresh just because why not? And at this point, we'll see that my pipeline has been brought back in. My data sets that I've worked on already have been brought back in. And I'm going to go back and show you how to do these. But what I just wanted to show you was really kind of connecting the dots between this and also this. So I think that was really all I wanted to cover in this video. In the future videos, what we're going to do is actually walk through the creation of these pipelines and the link services, and setting up things like the integration runtime on our server, all that kind of stuff. So it'll be fun. I'll see you in the next one.